I don't think anyone in this room would deny that extradition has a very important role to play in the criminal justice system and in ensuring that people aren't able to escape justice just by crossing international boundaries. That's all well and good, but one thing I think there's a huge amount of consensus on as well in the room today is that our current law, as encapsulated in the 2003 Act, is rotten to the core. That's because human beings are not parcels, they're not sacks of potatoes, they're not robots, they're not people they're not objects that can be passed on from one country to another without very real human consequences. And I think the 4 cases that are being highlighted in the room today by the admirable and painstaking work of the families that have been so affected really serve to highlight just how real those devastating human consequences can be. If you're extradited abroad, the likelihood is you will lose your job, you may lose your home, you face such huge legal expenses when you get to your foreign jurisdiction. With many of the countries we have extradition arrangements with, you will face a kind of justice that we wouldn't recognise to be justice here in the UK. Your family will suffer, you may spend years and years in prison, not granted bail because you're seen as a flight risk, before your case even comes to trial. And then you may not, as I say, face justice as we understand it to be. So the consequences are incredibly, incredibly grave. Post 9/11, there were understandable concerns by the then government as to whether our whether our statute book was up to scratch to deal with the very real threat from terrorism. We saw all sorts of knee-jerk legislating taking place during that period, much of which has actually now been cleared up, whether it's internment for foreign nationals without charge or trial, stop and search without suspicion. A huge amount of work has been done to put right the things that went wrong post 9/11. But the Extradition Act 2003 remains a glaring anomaly on our statute book. And there are a couple of very simple things that could be done very easily by this Parliament if government really takes the initiative now to put back the safeguards that are so vitally needed to protect vulnerable people. The first thing that Liberty's been campaigning for is that nobody should go anywhere, whether it's the US or elsewhere, without a basic case being made out in a UK court as to why they need to face trial in another jurisdiction. It's not a lot to ask, you might think, but currently our legislation does not provide even that basic protection for people here in the UK. The second thing that we've been asking for, and which affects, I think, all of the cases that we're talking about here today, is that our law currently enables somebody to be shipped off abroad, even if the accusation against them does not include anything to do with them setting foot in the country to which they're going to be extradited. So you don't even need to leave your own home to potentially be facing prosecution in America, in Russia, or in any of the other places that we have extradition arrangements with, and that has to be flawed. So we say that our judges should have the opportunity to say that justice is better served by somebody facing trial here in the UK. The third thing that we want to put right is something that applies within Europe under the arrest warrant, which has already been mentioned today, which is that you can be shipped off to a country in Europe to face trial for allegations that wouldn't be a criminal offence if they took place here in the UK. So although our Parliament doesn't think something needs to be criminalised, because another country in Europe does, you could face trial abroad, and we say that that is just simply wrong. These safeguards were removed from the statute book in 2003. There was a huge amount of opposition building before the last election from the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats to put this right. We've even now had the Home Secretary that signed many of these safeguards away. Former Home Secretary David Blunkett say that if he knew then what he knew now, he wouldn't have given so much away. So the fact that there is political will across the House, I think, is undisputed. The fact that we have such a fantastic demonstration of cross-party support for reform here today is incredibly, incredibly heartening. But what we need now is to put a huge amount of pressure on the government, because it's simply wrong, as Zach said, it's simply downright wrong that when you have manifesto commitments, when you have promises made in the coalition programme for government, when you have the front bench opposition calling for change, the government is still able to drag its heels. And something has to be done incredibly urgently to put that right. So Liberty will continue doing all that we have been and more to try and get these reforms urgently made. and I urge everybody here today to do all you can as well.